What's up, guys? Today I've got a special treat for ya, a Fullmetal Alchemist treat. Yeah, so today I want to do a little something different. I want to compare Fullmetal Alchemist 2003 to Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood 2009. So I just finally watched Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. I watched Fullmetal Alchemist a long time ago, and I put off Brotherhood for a long time, and I finally watched Brotherhood. And when I went to watch Brotherhood, I wanted to know what the differences were, and I wanted to know what people really thought and compared to the two. And I didn't find much out there. Obviously, you can find what the changes are. You know, you can find those details, but there's a lot of stuff about how the shows are conveyed that I wanted to know more about. And these are my thoughts and feelings on it. So you guys might not agree with this, but I think personally that Fullmetal Alchemist 2003 and Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood 2009 are par and par with each other and just as good as each other, but for very different reasons. I know that's kind of controversial because I know a lot of people think Brotherhood's the better anime. It follows the manga. It's got a much better ending. It has a lot more development going on. But I want to explain why I feel Fullmetal Alchemist 2003 is up to par with Brotherhood. I loved Brotherhood, but I also loved the 2003 anime. So first off, before I go any further, this thing's going to be chock full of spoilers. So if you have not watched Fullmetal Alchemist 2003 or Brotherhood, I implore you to stop this video right now and go watch them, okay? Go watch both of them in whichever order you'd like. I personally, if you're asking me, I recommend do Fullmetal Alchemist 2003 and then do Brotherhood just like they were released in. Don't forget the movies. There's a movie that follows the 2003 anime, and there's a movie that follows the Brotherhood anime. So, you know, watch the shows, watch the movies. I'll give you, I don't know, a couple weeks, because that's about how long it took me. Okay, you back? Okay, great. So, first let's talk about the changes between the two. And the biggest change of all is what happens after a major character's death. And we're talking about Hughes, obviously. So, Hughes is a pretty big deal in both animes, because when he dies, plot diverges very dramatically, and it starts to really roll into what's going on and build the story. Now, at the time that they made Fullmetal Alchemist 2003, the manga was not complete yet, and that's the big reason as to why Fullmetal Alchemist 2003 really diverges from what the manga and Brotherhood does, and created its own conclusion, and you know, told a lot of the end part of the story in its own way, which they obviously had a lot of clues of what was going to happen from the manga, because there's a lot of parallel between the Fullmetal Alchemist 2003 version and Brotherhood in what happens in the later stories. It just doesn't follow too closely, it doesn't have the same baddies, doesn't have the same ending, and totally changes some world building aspects, which we'll get into. But here's what I will say. I think the 2003 version has the stronger intro to the characters, and intro to the world, intro in general. Brotherhood, I think, leaned a little too much on relying on the fact that you've probably seen the 2003 anime, and so therefore they quickly sped up what the 2003 anime did in 26 episodes into only 9 or 10 episodes in the Brotherhood version. So it retold it very quickly. Not that that's a bad thing. Like Brotherhood does it very well. It includes all the important information you need to be able to get the story and get what's going on. I just thought that we spent more time really developing the Elric brothers and developing the world and the story in the 2003 anime, and taking its sweet time to get to, you know, the spot where everything starts to go topsy-turvy and things really start to spiral. It took 26 episodes to do that. And there's stuff that Brotherhood mentions but didn't bother to show at all, that the 2003 anime showed everything for. And I appreciate it for that. You know, I do appreciate the 2003 anime for really giving me a much fuller beginning and a much more, you know, informative intro to the characters, to the world, and everything around it. Now, for where it diverges, Brotherhood does some things, again, that the manga did that tell very different perspective. It went very heavy on other characters in Brotherhood. And this might be a bit of a controversial opinion of my own. I like how the 2003 anime is more steeled upon the Elric brothers themselves. It's more their story. It doesn't feature any of the other characters as heavily as Brotherhood, or obviously the manga, did in the end. Now, a lot of people implored Brotherhood in the manga for featuring really good characters and really developing them and building out the world so much and bringing in more, you know? Whereas the Fullmetal Alchemist 2003 version really kept it the Elric story. They kept it tighter knit, and they made it more personal, I think. And Brotherhood goes to show just how effective the rest of the world is to this story. Not just these two brothers, but how this affects a nation, or more than a nation. You know, it affects numerous countries in Brotherhood, and so I get why people like that aspect of Brotherhood, but I do appreciate the first anime for giving us a different telling of it and giving us a more focused telling of it in the Elric's point of view, really. There's a lot of characters, especially the women characters in Brotherhood, that you get a lot more time with and a lot more development with, and it does pertain, the way the Brotherhood tells the story, it does pertain well to that version of the story. It helps to understand and feel much more emotion for not just the Elric brothers, but for the nation as a whole, and to feel a lot more of that impact from what's going on and what the bad guys are trying to do in Brotherhood. Whereas I see how that might be lost in translation in Fullmetal Alchemist. Once you finally get to the big ending, it felt like a bit of a payoff that their dad is so heavily involved, because the story has been centered on these boys so much that if had it been, you know, something too outlandish like Brotherhood's ending, then it wouldn't have felt as impactful, because it's so heavily focused on these brothers and not so much the rest of the world. But let's talk about some of those details, some of those big details that changed, and particularly we're talking about the bad guys that changed. It focused heavily, the 2003 version anyways, focused heavily on the Elric's father and how his role was just as important in Brotherhood, but came down to a more pertinent ending. You know, his character and the main bad guy's character, the one who created the homunculus in the 2003 version, was told in a much more personal way to the Elric brothers, because it was a deep personal connection to their father. And this person, Dante, I think it was Dante, the chick that the father had been involved with years past, and they both became what do you call that, immortal, and therefore they've always been having to recreate a philosopher's stone to keep transferring, so it's something like that. I vaguely remember what's going on there, but it felt more personal because this person was so connected to their father and was trying to use the boys as a means for another philosopher's stone to prolong their life. It was very personal, very intercut, and the conflict at the end. They chose to speed things up in the Fullmetal Alchemist 2003 version, and chose to make the big conflict in that desert town that they feature in the very beginning of the series. They chose to make that the big, important, impactful ending moment. This big war that goes on there, and so many dark things that happen from that war, and the fact that they end up creating a damn philosopher's stone by sacrificing tons of people. And they don't retcon that as much as the Brotherhood version retcons some of the stuff it does. They left it as dark as that in the Fullmetal Alchemist 2003 version, and I kind of appreciate them for going for such a dark twist. And they didn't stop there. The other big difference is let's talk about the ending for a moment here. The ending, the 2003 version, I mean, they do get their bodies back, which is the big point of the anime. You know, this is the big storyline, is, are they going to get their bodies back? They do get their bodies back. But the minute they get their bodies back, Ed is ripped into our world instead of his own world in this Full Metal Alchemist universe, and he happens to end up in Germany Nazi, in I think the 1940s, early 40s, somewhere around there. I think it's at the height of the war, and then it carries on into the movie where that story's kind of wrapped up with him having to stop some sort of group of baddies trying to get into his world to get a hold of alchemy or something like that. And so Alphonse ends up getting sucked into our world as well, and therefore joins his brother. And so there's not much. I get how it was unsatisfying to not see Winfrey join up with Ed and not see much more development with the other characters, and it kind of just did this quick little weird roundabout ending that was just a way to tie it off but leave it kind of open-ended. I was very intrigued with the way they ended it like that, but I do see why Brotherhood is beloved for its ending and beloved for its character development that pays off well in the ending. So let's talk about Brotherhood on the other side here. Again, we'll jump back a little bit to the baddies in the world development here. Brotherhood chooses to involve some other countries and a ton more characters and really spend time with other characters, so you feel more invested in the plot and what's going on to the country or the world as a whole in this story versus just the Elric brothers, and you feel more invested with the storyline because of that, I think. So I do applaud Brotherhood for that heavily, and I think the bad guy pay around was very interesting and clever in Brotherhood, to have this original homunculus thing that was created by man that then took the likeness of the Elric's father, grew into this giant creature that originally destroyed a small town to create a Philosopher's Stone and have life, and then has been building this big country for so long to, with other homunculus and whatnot, has been creating this country just to one day make more Philosopher's Stone to become even more powerful and become a god, basically. So I think that was a much more broad, it wasn't so personal, just the brother's father and this other character trying to prolong their life. It was the fact that this small being that was created by man tried to control man and tried to become god, and I get that grander sense of the story from the way the baddies developed in Brotherhood. And then there's the ending. And the ending in Brotherhood has pretty much everyone involved in the same way that Fullmetal Alchemist tried to get everybody involved, the 2003 version. But Brotherhood has this big climactic, more, I think, well-rounded ending because of how it's so centered and back to the it's back to Central, back to their main town where everything's the hub. So it's not some other town that was visited that it's going back to. It's the central town that they're going to, and the fact that everybody, including people from other countries, get involved, and it's this big climactic moment when different factions are fighting, and it prolongs it in a lot grander sense. And then the fact that the bad guy technically wins for a little bit, but then is kind of tricked into not getting the god power, and then all the ones who are left over have to fight the god, including the Elric brothers at this point, have to fight this god and slowly strip him back down of his godlike powers. And it was very emotional, very impactful, very, you're seeing beloved characters die, you're seeing, the world get torn apart, and it was a much more emotional payoff because of that. Now let's also talk about the female characters being much more developed. You feel with the Mustang's lieutenant, even the Mustang character is really well done, but Mustang's lieutenant there, Risa, I think, and Winfrey are just more important in the Brotherhood anime, and they take a lot more time to develop their character and to understand their feelings and their emotions in the anime, and therefore when things get so intense for, say, Mustang or the brothers, you feel even more heartbreak when the women characters are troubled by what's going on in the guys they look up to, so a lot more of impactful motion, not so much personal telling like the first story, but a much more broader sense of world coming together, and the emotions that are flying high at the peak of the ending there, the peak of the climax there, and then it wraps up in a really nice way. Like, it actually finishes the story, and Ed, nobody gets sucked into another world. Ed ends up with Winfrey, and Alphonse gets his brother back, and it's a very satisfactory ending, and it smooths everything over. You see all the other characters play out and see how they're moving on in life, and it's really heartwarming, I think, in the end, to see how these characters churn out because of how broad and how big Brotherhood did decide to take it. So that's why I personally think that there's some strong points for Fullmetal Alchemist 2003, and there's a lot of strong points for Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. So I think they really are neck and neck, pin to pin, on how good they are and what their strengths are. I would give Fullmetal Alchemist 2003 the win for the personal connection, the development of the Elric brothers, and its introduction to a lot of things going on, the plot and the brothers themselves. But I definitely give a big win to Brotherhood for the world building, the character development, the ending, and all around the way they developed the story and where they wanted to take the story. And then just a quick mention for the movie of Brotherhood. I mentioned that the Fullmetal Alchemist 2003 movie just wraps up the ending even more. But the Brotherhood movie doesn't follow after the story. It jumps sometime back in the middle of the story, but was a very interesting look at a whole different scenario, different issue in a different country that had a little bit to do with Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood storyline, but not so much. Kind of really it took another whole sub-story and put the spotlight on it, and I thought that was really neat. I thought it was cool to see a whole nother part of this world yet again in a featured spotlight that had, I won't say little to do, but it had a lot less to do with Brotherhood than the movie to the 2003 anime did. The movie to the 2003 anime was very much right a part of that package and ending the story. And Brotherhood decided to make a movie that was just another piece of this world that goes to show how big this world is and how much more you could tell of this world. And I got that sense from the Brotherhood movie. So a lot of differences, a lot of similarities. I really like, I think, both anime the exact same for what they do differently to each other, and they counter each other perfectly. So I don't think you can watch one and not watch the other. I think you gotta watch both, and you gotta celebrate both the same way as I do. If I were to score them, I'd score them exactly the same, and I'd give both Fullmetal Alchemist 2003 and Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood a 9, a solid 9. Are they peak perfect 10 for me? Not quite, but they are a solid 9 for being just really well told stories. They are, like, to me, some of the most excellent anime you can see today. In every aspect, the animation itself, the voice acting, the story, everything about it, the music too. It's peak anime, and there's very few that top it, in my opinion. So if you're looking for, if you're brand new to anime, or if you've been watching a little bit of anime, Fullmetal Alchemist is something that's intrigued you, but you have no idea what you're getting into, you probably shouldn't have been watching this video because I spoiled a lot, but you still can watch them, and they still have a lot of fun with them. But for those of you who have watched Fullmetal Alchemist 2003 and Brotherhood and have wanted to hear, you know, a little bit about the differences and comparisons and why I think the two are together, drop a comment. Let me know what you think. Do you think they are neck and neck like I say? Do you think that Fullmetal Alchemist is just as good as Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood? Or do you disagree and you're in the camp that Brotherhood is the better anime in the end? Let me know in the comments. But I hope you guys were intrigued by my thoughts at the least. Maybe it'll give you a different perspective on the 2003 anime. Maybe you'll feel like going back and rewatching the two now and comparing them even more now that you kind of have some different things to clue in on in each anime. So those are my thoughts. Thanks for watching.